Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy. Sometimes you meet people from the data protection community.
You're listening to Serious Privacy, powered by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kay Royal and Paul Breitbart.
And got to meet the team responsible for the development and upkeep of NIMBY research. The director of research at the time is also today's guest, Meaghan McCluskey. And both Kay and I have worked with Meaghan for a long time, right until the moment she also left TrustArc, which, as you know by now, acquired NIMBY at the end of 2019. Today, Meaghan works as a privacy consultant for The Privacy Pro based out of Toronto, and she is also one of the co-founders of Privacy Architect, a set of tools that will help you jumpstart the development of a data protection compliance program. And I'm excited to hear more. Kay may join later in the podcast. She is on vacation, was trying to join, so we'll see what happens there. But as always, my name is Paul Breitbart, and welcome to Serious Privacy. Meaghan, so good to see you. It's been such a long time since we've been able to actually catch up, and now we let the full audience of Serious Privacy just listen into our conversation.
I know. Good to see you, Paul. Thank you for the introduction. And hello to the listeners, particularly those former NIMBY and TrustArc folks who I know many still listen to the podcast and enjoy it. So,
absolutely.
Hello all.
No, we're happy to have you on. And I'm sure Kay would want me to start with an unexpected question. While I look for one, can you maybe just start by telling, how did you get into privacy?
How did I get into privacy? Well, the short answer, I kind of fell into it. I was in law school. Yeah, I was in law school at the time, and I wanted to go into health privacy and health law and really focus on the challenges around access to healthcare. And when I finished law school in Canada, you have to do a year of articling. So an articling placement to train you up kind of in the more practical side of things before you can actually practice law. And I was lucky enough to get a position with the Information Privacy Commissioner of Ontario in Kavukian at the time. And her office was kind of where I got my start in privacy. And I had so much fun working with the legal team there that I stayed in privacy ever since.
Very good. I have the unexpected question by now as well. So I will ask you, what is the best thing you have bought this year so far?
The best thing I have bought? Well, I don't tend to focus on a lot of material possessions. Anyone who knows me, I used to give my team a hard time because I'll drive beat up cars and make things last as long as possible. So the best thing I have bought this year was I have a cottage and I bought a kind of foam mat that I can put out in the water that the children can run around on and fall off every which way. And they love it and it keeps them entertained. And that means I get more time to relax and read and sit on the dock and, throw them in a life jacket and they're fine. So that's the best thing I bought this year.
Absolutely amazing. I guess for me, it was my steam oven. That's something that has been on my list for a long time. With the renovations to the house and the new kitchen, I had to get one, and I'm very happy it's there. It's being used quite a lot.
What do you steam in the oven?
Anything from vegetables and fish to just heating up dim sum and Chinese baos and things like that. But also just to help reheat food. It's better than in the microwave because you get more flavor. It helps for baking bread because you can add more steam so you can get a crisp. So I use it for a lot of things, actually.
Nice. Does it heat up?
It does, yeah. Well, that's, I guess, also because it's a very modern oven. So I guess it's a minute and it's hot. So it saves a lot of time in cooking as well. That's for sure. So you told us about getting into privacy, getting hooked like so many of us indeed. And then you ended up somehow at Nimity. I guess Terry found you.
Terry did. Terry was doing some work in partnership with the privacy commissioner at the time, working on privacy by design concept. And so he had some interactions with the legal team, and the end of my articling year was coming up. And so they recommended me for the Nimity role. And Terry said, well, I'm happy to have good lawyers on board, because right then Nimity was trying to expand into the United States. So I got into Nimity to build out the US product and the breach response product. So,
and both are still around.
And both are still around. Both are still widely used.
And we've been recommending Nimity research on the show since we started, but I can only underline very heavily how much time the breach response tool has saved me over the years. Just a very quick check. Is this something that I need to report? And if so, how do I need to do that? That is already such a game changer. And especially if you are under pressure of reporting deadlines, that you don't need to go to outside counsel to check whether a law in, say, Thailand or Argentina or in one of the US states has reporting obligations or not. And if so, what the threshold is. That's already way more value for money than anything else could give you.
Yeah, Nimity Research was best in class for providing kind of summary information around the entire world's data protection landscape. I miss on a daily basis having a research team at my disposal, because having a whole team of people who are able to tell me, here's exactly what's going on in privacy today. Here are the new updates. They were excellent at covering off, and they still are excellent at covering off kind of globally, keeping you in the loop on major developments. And I do miss having them report directly to me so I could stay on top of everything in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, now you need to do your updates yourself, right? And keep up and then tell your customers how it works.
Yep.
So what is life like on the other side? What is life like being a consultant instead of the know-it-all and the one that everybody goes to?
Life is fascinating. It was time for me to make a move because I wanted a new challenge, and I'd had a great time with TrustArc and a lot of good people there doing a lot of great work. But I'd been building products for 15 years at that point, and I thought, okay, let's go see how the other side lived. I've been helping people comply with the laws and understand and, really understand the compliance requirements, but let's go see those in action. And consulting has been a fascinating window into that world, because it's much easier when you're a privacy lawyer to say, okay, here are the requirements of laws X, Y, and Z. You need to do A, you need to do B, you need to do C, right? Standard data privacy principles, data minimization, all that good stuff. But when you're working with businesses, you need to move beyond kind of a privacy lawyer mindset and become what we call a privacy architect. So if you think of an architect, a traditional architect, you want to build your dream home. They're not starting by asking you and telling you about the building codes. They're saying, what do you want to see in your home? What's your lifestyle? What are your tastes? What's your family situation? What's your wish list? And they take that vision and they translate it into a design. Privacy architects need to do the same thing, but with data. That you're going to understand the business needs. You understand the company's goals and culture, and then you're translating those complex privacy requirements into an actionable plan. Because you need to be able to speak to the business in their language, and you need to make privacy resonate for them in a way that it's a solution rather than a requirement. So, taking concepts like privacy by design, and instead of letting privacy kind of dictate the business decision, you're making sure that business objectives are driving the privacy solutions. Because otherwise, they're not going to get implemented. Or lines of business aren't going to engage privacy when they should be, because they don't want to be told no, or they don't want to have obstacles thrown up. We often hear privacy hinders innovation. So by adopting a privacy architect mindset, it allows you to change that. So that's kind of where it's been fascinating and completely new for me, because I was the one who was saying, okay, here are all the requirements. But now I need to understand, here are all the things you're trying to do. And how can I make that fit within the requirements?
All the requirements. So do you mainly work with the operational people in the company or also with some people who have a background in privacy and would already understand some of those requirements and maybe have started to do the translation?
In our work, we work with both. We take a really business-friendly approach, and we are trying to bridge the gap between business goals and privacy. So we can often work as that translator. So, we go into the business and talk to them on their level, tell me your day-to-day job. Like, what are you trying to do? What are you being told you can't do because of privacy? What would you like to do if you could be doing anything? Tell me about how you use data in your day-to-day. Tell me about, if we're talking to, like, let's say a marketing team, tell me about that customer journey. How do they go from never having heard of your company to becoming a website visitor to making a purchase? All the ways that the data is flowing and how they're interacting with data and what they'd like to be doing with the data. And then we take that and we talk to the privacy team in terms of here's what's going on and here are what the requirements are. And so now we need to do some kind of risk assessment to decide what we can allow, what can't be allowed, or what the controls are. Because, businesses can say, we will decide not to do that processing because it's too privacy risky. We don't want to do it. Business can also say, you know what, that business activity, that's high value. It's going to make us a lot of money or it's going to solve a huge problem. And we're going to do it despite the privacy risks.
Yeah, we're going to assume the risk.
We're going to assume
and we're going to hope that the DPA doesn't look at what we are doing, at least not for this part, and that we'll get away with it.
Exactly. That is a business decision that can be made.
Yeah.
Or there's somewhere in the middle, right? That, we're going to do the business activity, but we've got either mitigating controls to mitigate the risk, or we're going to transfer the risk using insurance or contracts, some way to address the risks and bring it down to a residual level that's acceptable. So we help facilitate that conversation between the privacy team and the business team so that the business is the one who's ultimately accountable for the decision.
Yes.
If you want to assume the risk, that's fine. But, business leader, Mr. VP, Ms. CEO, sign off on it and everyone's good to go ahead. Oftentimes when you put it to someone like that and say, well, it's your name that's going on this document saying you're accepting the risk, people don't like to do that. They don't want to put their name next to it. Yeah. So at that point, you're having a good conversation around, okay, how do we mitigate the risk a little bit?
Yeah, they're happy that somebody takes the risk, at least as long as it's not them. I mean, an outside consultant, sure, fine. Let's have them accept the risk.
Yeah, but once you put your name on it, especially, some of these laws, as we move from privacy being kind of strictly a privacy issue to almost being consumer protection issues and being enforced by competition bureaus and other enforcers, there's oftentimes like director and officer liability that's involved that, if you're signing up on risk, you got to be careful.
Yeah, fully agree with that. So what has been the most challenging part of the law where you say, well, I never expected that this would give me such a headache?
It would give me such a headache. One of the challenges is always getting information from the right people because people have a hard time moving away from their day job. They don't like to be distracted. Let's put that in quotes. From what they should be doing. So trying to get business buy-in to say, we're here to help you and partner with you to make sure you're able to do what you want to do is important because they're seeing you as, oh, who is this outside person? It's another privacy person who's here to ask me questions and I don't have time for that because I got to get to my day job. So I'd say making sure that communication around what you're trying to accomplish and how it benefits them is key because you want that buy-in.
And any of the fun stuff like processing activities registers, or do you really leave that to the companies themselves?
We tend to focus more on strategy and helping companies understand how they're using data because a lot of times they don't necessarily understand all of the not just the ways they're using data, but the reasons why they're using data. So really teasing out clear, what we call data process mapping and data process profiles to understand not just the data flows, because there's data flow tools, and not just, data discovery. Oh yeah, you've got that type of information here. You got that type of information over there. But understanding really the business reasons why you're doing what you're doing, and helping privacy officers ask better questions. Because a lot of times if you look at standard PIAs, standard templates, they're asking privacy questions, not business questions.
Yeah.
Does this initiative use personal information? Well, now you need to explain what in that jurisdiction does personal information mean? Because half of the business people don't know that an IP address is considered personal information. So
most of privacy people also still don't know that, at least not the ones that do the contracting.
And the number of privacy officers who don't necessarily understand like the marketing ecosystem and all the data flows and different types of trackers and all of that. It's complicated. So helping to ask better questions, use industry-specific terms and concepts, instead of asking privacy questions like, is this data collection necessary? Nobody can say no to that question. You can't say no. I don't need this information I want to collect. So,
this is your project. You're obviously going to need it because you want to do something with it.
Exactly. The business thinks everything they're collecting is necessary.
Yeah, but is it business essential? Can you also do it without it?
Right. And that's the question you should be asking. Would the initiative be successful without the data?
Yeah.
Do you provide adequate privacy notice at or before the point of collection? It's another privacy question. Just try something simpler, like how do people know that their information is being collected? So helping kind of focus on business phrasing instead of privacy phrasing.
Okay, that makes sense. The Privacy Pro is still it's a boutique consultancy, right? I think you're 5 or 6 lawyers right now.
Yeah, we're a boutique. We focus mostly on privacy strategy, data process mapping. We will help populate like ROPAs and things out of our work. We don't tend to focus on privacy program implementations as much, but we have and we can. But our passion is in helping enable business. So adopting kind of that yes and mindset that yes, business, you can go use data for this purpose.
As long as you do this and this.
Here are the things you need to do to make it happen. Yeah. Exactly.
So what kind of companies hire you? Is that larger companies? Is it SMEs? Is it strictly Canadian? Is it global?
I'd say our primary focus tends to be Canada and United States. We have worked across sectors before. So a lot of finance and fintech, nonprofit has a lot of work around privacy they need to do. Entertainment, hospitality, a lot of private sector industries. We're pretty broad. The one thing we don't tend to touch is healthcare. We don't do healthcare, but medical technology would be in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But if it's strict HIPAA compliance or personal health information, and not that there's no thoughts, and it's ironic coming from me because I started my journey in law school expecting and wanting to do health law. But it's not as exciting. It's not as fun.
I'm pretty sure that Kay would disagree here, and she would argue that HIPAA is a lot of fun and that she's very passionate about HIPAA. But for me, as a European, health data privacy laws, we don't have anything specific. I mean, we just have the overarching ones with some specific provisions, but a full health privacy law, that's not second nature to me.
Yeah, I'd say HIPAA is important. Is it exciting? I don't know. But new uses of personal health information and technology, that would be interesting, Yeah. I love, AI in healthcare, fascinating because there's such a demand for healthcare that can't be met, particularly, I'm talking particularly in Canada because of the public health system, but I assume it applies elsewhere that there's a demand for better healthcare, and AI is able to address that. And that's a fascinating area. So like I said, medical technology, fun. Yeah. Straight up HIPAA compliance in a hospital?
Not so much.
It mostly turns into an information security exercise and
ticking boxes. Yeah. No, I mean that healthcare technology is exciting. There I fully agree with you, and very curious to see where the world is heading. I was looking at Apple's press conference earlier this week where they introduced a new Apple Watch that now is also able to discover whether people have sleep apnea.
Oh, yeah.
And having sleep apnea myself, and I've only been diagnosed because I was traveling with a friend who is a medical doctor and said, hey, are you aware of this? And have you ever had it checked? But now a watch is able to do that. Indeed, because of a study they did with sleep apnea patients and an algorithm that they ran in partnership with hospitals and all of these patients at a very large scale to find out, okay, so is there something we can do with how you move and how you turn and your heart rate and I don't know what to discover this? And apparently they reached an 80% accuracy. That's impressive for a first iteration. And indeed, that is what medical technology would be able to do. So not all AI is bad. It's sometimes scary, but there are certainly very positive use cases here.
Definitely. Context is important. And I will say, sleep apnea is the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of us probably have some degree of sleep apnea, just undiagnosed most of the time.
Well, that's also what they said. A lot of people just don't know that they have it. And how would you find out? Because if you think that you sleep fine, how would you ever discover? So yeah, it is a fascinating world. So without having the full research team at your disposal, how do you stay up to date when it comes to privacy developments?
Oh, I have a few law firms I still track. I have the IPP subscriptions I still use. I would kill for anonymity research subscription, but don't have the budget for it right now. So yeah, mostly a lot of kind of manual searching on jurisdictions of interest. And I just have to accept that I will no longer know necessarily off the top of my head what is happening in, say, Bangladesh or, some of those newer to data privacy jurisdictions that I can't keep it on top of the world anymore like I used to. So I've got to narrow my focus a little bit.
So you're not aware of the latest fines that were imposed by the Kenyan or the Rwanda Data Protection Authority or?
I am not. not. If you told me that Kenya's been really active, I'd be like, sure, Paul. Yeah. I believe you.
Well, they have been really active. I haven't seen any fines out of Kenya or Rwanda this week, just to confirm. What I did see is a press release from the Canadian Office of the Privacy Commissioner that I think you have also seen on the Facebook case. And this is a case already going back to 2013. Between 2013 and 2015, Facebook apparently breached PIPEDA. It was investigated in 2019. And now the courts in Canada have finally confirmed that the investigation of the DPA was right.
Yes. Huge victory for the OPC. Obviously a long time coming. Cambridge Analytica. Does anyone remember what that was anymore? So
this was a Cambridge Analytica case. I did not remember that was the link, but
that was the link. That was where it started. The disclosure, the sharing of data.
That's a long time ago. And indeed, that Facebook is now being told of and also being told to get ready for compensation for Canadians. I think that is a good thing, even though it's late.
I mean, we'll see what that looks like. We haven't had a privacy decision from the OPC that's then gone to court and had fines issued and had compensation to Canadians issued, let's say. So I am curious as to what kind of amount of money anyone would be entitled to because of this, or how you can qualify as a class. I'm thinking about typical class actions, right? Like you have to show that you are actually a member of the class. So is the fact that I just had a Facebook account at the relevant time enough? Or do I have to somehow demonstrate that my data was shared with Cambridge Analytica, or is the onus on Facebook to say, okay, or any of these people who are in Canada and making a claim part of the data that was sent?
Did they participate in any of the games that Cambridge Analytica put on the platform, and was their data collected because of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how you'd prove that, because, I don't think I participated in any of the games Cambridge Analytica put on the platform. I don't tend to use Facebook for games.
But you may have inadvertently done so back in 2013. It's 11 years ago.
It's 11 years ago, right? Like, how do you prove, yeah, sure. 11 years ago, I did something. I can barely remember what I did last week. Right to be forgotten is a real a daily exercise in my household.
I mean, I would have difficulties even to prove it, because I closed my Facebook account a couple of years ago. Then how would I collect the evidence to actually be able to demonstrate that this was also me?
And if those games were, let's say, collecting contacts of users, so let's say I didn't use a game, but my friend on Facebook used a game, and the app was collecting not just their information, but also their contacts and their friends' information. Maybe you're caught all the same and you just have no idea. So I'm curious to see what they do, if there is any compensation. I mean, I can't imagine it'll be much.
$25, $50?
If that.
Plus interest. And that is where it can become interesting.
Because, demonstrate the harm. I don't know that I was harmed by it, really. So
no, you don't know, but also maybe because you are not aware, because you have never been informed by Facebook, hey, your data were part of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And if you had known, then maybe you would have been outraged, because you work in privacy, so there would be harm that you had been a victim of this egregious violation of data. No, it's true. It's very hard, especially non-material harm and non-material damages. It's very hard to assess what the right amount would be and how that would be done. But I would assume that the burden of proof would indeed lie with Facebook, because they are the only ones that have all the data.
Yeah.
That's the other piece of news I want to throw at you, because, I mean, you like the privacy news still, is the constitutional change that was adopted in Mexico today. And today is September 11, 2024. Mexico has been working on the constitutional change for quite a while, trying to get rid of some judges in the Supreme Courts that were not as government friendly, at least for the current outgoing president than for others. But as part of this constitutional reform, also quite a few of the independent supervisory authorities will be abolished. And that includes INAI, the Mexican Data Protection Authority, which, if this law that has been approved by the Senate today indeed makes it into being officially announced and getting into the official journal, it would mean that the official Data Protection Authority in Mexico, which is also the chair of the Global Privacy Assembly, would disappear. That's bad news for data protection, I would say.
It's bad news for data protection. Certainly doesn't send a good message to Mexican business or Mexican consumers that their data is going to be protected. I'd heard about the constitutional change. In terms of impact, I'm not sure it'll have a huge impact on how businesses do business. There hadn't been a ton of enforcement in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, one of the commissioners at the INAI was actually assassinated because they were investigating a body. The INAI did both private sector and public sector. And they were investigating some government agency or individual, and the commissioner wound up getting assassinated. So there's already a concern around, how effective can the INAI be if its powers are being curtailed or blocked? I'm looking for a word, basically
hindered, at least. Yeah, because they hadn't had a quorum also for quite a long time already, because commissioners were not appointed pending this whole discussion on potential change of the constitution. But for me, it is a concern that independent regulators, and especially ones that play such an important role at the global stage, would be impacted in this way.
Yeah. The fact that they're removing data protection privacy bodies is not a good sign in terms of making you feel like privacy is going to be respected. It feels like a move towards a greater surveillance society, if that's where it's going.
Yeah. In my recollection, it only happened twice before. The Madrid Data Protection Authority ceased to exist back in 2009 when they just ran out of budget and there was no more money in the local government to keep funding a data protection authority, but their tasks were taken over by the federal authority in Spain. And then, of course, we have had the case in Hungary where the data protection authority was abolished by the Orban government because he didn't like the commissioner and couldn't fire the commissioner. And that case ended up before the European Court of Justice, and Hungary was sanctioned because of that. Because, of course, that is a violation of the independence of the supervisory authority, just abolishing one and creating another one just because you don't like somebody.
Yeah, the independence of these boards is paramount in order to maintain kind of confidence and independence. You need to be fully independent of government and able to operate freely. So the fact that they would disband the board, speaks to a government that doesn't really want to honor privacy.
Exactly.
And, we see this in different countries that the scope or, areas of focus of the board kind of reflect government policy. Russia, It's not really about privacy. It's about maintaining data and data localization and keeping foreign companies out, consolidating wealth. And certain countries, you just see a different approach to regulating privacy that might not be called privacy or certainly privacy protective.
No, that's certainly true. And what about your own government? Are you confident that we will see the light of C27, the new Canadian privacy law, before the next Canadian elections, or should we give up that hope?
Give up.
Okay.
Give up that hope. That's not happening. I honestly, at this point, I think we're likelier to see a provincial law in Ontario before we see a federal law. And only if there's a way for the provincial government to make money for them.
So which federal law will we see sooner, the American one or the Canadian one?
I will give Canada over America. I will do that because I think at this point, when you look at kind of the history of legislation in the state, you always get, in terms of privacy, you always get California leading the charge and some of the other more liberal states. And then it slowly spreads over the next 5 years to all the states. So we're kind of in the mid-range right now, more and more states are picking up. And only when you hit 46 states have laws, does something federal happen. So, with the election, maybe that could change. Maybe we'll find a way for both sides of the house to talk to each other. But honestly, it's so partisan in the United States that I don't expect a federal law, certainly not before a Canadian federal law.
Okay. And if I let you choose between a Canadian federal law and the European e-privacy regulation that's been in the works for 6-7 years now?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, which one wins? I'm going to give Canada. I'm going to give it to Canada. I think
that's wise.
Ahead of the privacy regulation.
I think that's wise. And
just because the Europeans' focus has strayed. Not because they're not going to get it done at some point, but they're too focused right now on AI and this whole
digital services
strategy, Digital Markets Act. Everything is much bigger picture there that I think e-privacy has become, it's too small of the piece. They're working at higher levels.
I think you are right. I'm hopeful that somewhere before the end of the decade, at least, we'll see new e-privacy legislation because the current legislation is outdated. We need an update. but it certainly won't be this draft. I think the draft will be repealed by the next commissioner and something new will be put on the table somewhere in the new mandate. I had hoped to confirm this week who the likely nominee would be for the Justice and Consumer Rights portfolio, but the names are not out there yet. So that we'll need to wait until next week. But for this week, Meaghan, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to catch up and hear all the exciting things that you are working on. If somebody in the US or Canada is looking for education on how to become a privacy architect, they will find you via the website of the Privacy Pro.
Yep. The Privacy Pro, LinkedIn. I'm going to play all the places.
Very good.
Thank you very much for having me.
Go and find Meaghan. And if you like the episode, please share it with your friends and coworkers. Join the conversation on LinkedIn under Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on social media as Heart of Privacy and myself as Europol B. Until next week, goodbye.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on Nimity research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.